My name is Bhargavi Shantikumar and I work for DHL Express in the Human Resource Development as HR Executive. And the topic for today, the challenges in changing mindset, is actually very interesting because the key thing in our role is understanding people from different mindsets. And especially when we are working with in a multicultural environment, one of the challenges is to understand the different mindsets of people. However, the subject matter expert today is Sister Jayanti, our speaker. Just to give a brief introduction about Sister Jayanti, she's the Director of Europe and Middle East of Brahma Kumaris and their NGO representative to United Nations Geneva. She administers BK centers more than 31 countries. And she's not only an insightful speaker in many of the world platforms, but for me personally, she's an authentic leader and a powerful yogi. So this topic, I'm definitely sure it's going to give us a very experiential learning today. And for us to take maximum benefit from that, I would also request all of you all to keep your mobile phones in silence or switched off preferably. I invite Sister Reena to welcome our speaker, Sister Jayanti, with a beautiful bouquet. Without further ado, now Sister Jayanti will share her experience and insight of the challenges in changing mindset.
Good evening, and a greeting of peace, Om Shanti. Who's hearing Om Shanti for the first time? Everyone's aware that it means I am peace? Good. What is it that creates mindset? Just a few minutes ago in conversation with someone, I was thinking that religion plays a major part in creating a very specific mindset. But that's not the only thing. From childhood, we've been taught so much, things that maybe are true, things that maybe are not so true. But we've inherited that mindset from our parents, maybe, a very specific way in which the mind is functioning. So we are born and it's like a clean slate, but then as you move along in life, early on, there are various things that start shaping your mindset. So firstly, definitely it's parents, and of course their culture and the things that they have believed to be true. Religion is part of that. But as time goes on, maybe our mindset begins to change because we are impacted by our friends. And today, probably most young people would say that their friends have a greater influence over their thinking than their parents did, or the parents do even today. And so I see many nodding your heads. So it's a fact that as time goes on, our mindset changes. But then, is there a point of time in which it's important to change our mindset and do something very different? Or sometimes it's external circumstances that push us into that. It may be that I was really just focused on a career, and then I'm told I have a critical illness. And I used to think that cancer impacts 1 in 3. But the other day I was told by somebody who knows about these things that no, in fact, it's 1 and 2. And so if you're sitting here and there are 2 people near you, out of the 3 of you, maybe 2 of you are going to be impacted. And age isn't a factor there. And why I say this is because I know several people who have actually had a very major turnaround when they discovered that they had this critical illness. People react in different ways to the same situation, and some react with a lot of bitterness, why me? But others react in a different way, and they begin to think, okay, well, I've been told I have a year, but I know of several people who've been told they have a year and they went on to live for 20 years. And so things like that happen. So they say, okay, maybe I've been told I have a year, but what is it I can do that I haven't done so far that was important for me, and I never made time for it? Maybe it was time to be with my family, and I never made time for that. And so they've put that year to very good use. And in some cases, the recovery has been amazing. In some cases where the family thought that they would need to give a lot of support to the parent, in fact, the parent was so strong that the parent was giving support to the others. And so what suddenly changed mindset? It was illness that came, maybe an accident that happens. A very dynamic woman I know, she was a leader, and by age 25, she's only about 28 now, but by age 25 she had achieved amazing things, especially in sustainability and environmental matters. And so I used to see her at all the climate change conferences I was going to. And suddenly, everything changed for her. And it was a very strange situation. She was playing with her, I think, 12-month-old daughter, just simply lying on her back and playing with her in a very loving way. But somehow, the child was about to fall, and so she reached out for the child and saved the child, but she did something to her back. And whatever it is that happened in medical terms is whatever, but she was flat on her back for 12 months. And over that period, she had a choice. Am I going to just say, oh, well, now I'm out of action, I'm out of the running, and people are going to forget about me? Because it wasn't a life and death issue. She knew she would recover, but she also knew that she needed absolutely to be motionless for that period of time. And so she knew she was not going to be doing the things that she had been doing. And so she decided that that was a time she was going to learn to meditate, because she knew that keeping the mind quiet would be a way in which the body would also be healed much faster. And so she very consciously set about learning to meditate. And I met her in her first visit out of her home when she came to one of our programs, and she was Danish, so this was in Copenhagen. So she came to the program, and it might have been about 18 months after the accident. And so she walked onto the stage very, very slowly. She still had to be very careful. And she said, if you'd asked me 20 months ago to come on the stage, I would have come running. And today, I can't do that. I've had to learn to slow down. And my mindset has changed completely. My priorities are very, very different. And so she went on to explain how the accident had made her think, well, what is the purpose of life? And she realized that sustainability and environment had been a big passion for her, but there had to be some deeper sense. And she began to think about life and nature and the sacredness of life. And so it changed her perspective in a very major way. So, I mean, this is just two examples of people I know who've turned things around in a very powerful way to benefit themselves. And of course, now she's very active, but no longer frenetic in the way I used to see her in earlier times. And she says, it was important that that happened to me in my life. It changed me completely. And now I give priority to things that weren't even on my radar earlier on. And so mindsets can change very dramatically in that way. But do I need to wait for an accident for that? Do I need to wait for a critical illness? No, I don't. There can be many things that happen in life, and I'm sure that all of you are exposed to all of those things, whether it's hearing of a tragedy like happened yesterday or it's anything else. But there can be a sudden jolt that makes me think, what am I going to do now? For me, it wasn't so dramatic, but it's a situation that happens with many people, and you find yourself in a situation where you have many choices, but maybe you don't have enough wisdom with which to be able to make your choice. And in today's world, we're very lucky. Most of us do have multiple choices. 100 years ago, people wouldn't necessarily have had that space. Even maybe 50 years ago, it wasn't as easy. But today, for most people, it's possible. You have many choices, but then, do I have sufficient wisdom to be able to make the right choice? Or is it that I start moving along one path and I stop and I say, well, maybe this isn't really what I want, which is also fine. You can always take another step. But maybe it's also possible to change my mindset and be able to look at the opportunities that I'm facing in a different way and be able to have deeper understanding, so that then I choose a path that not only am I comfortable with when I begin to walk that path, but I'm comfortable with it 10 years later, 20 years later, maybe even longer. And I was very lucky that I came across spirituality in a very natural and easy way. I was living in London for most of my life from childhood. We'd migrated, the whole family had gone to London from India. And I used to come to India on holiday from time to time. But then, when I had all these choices that were in front of me, Western life, Eastern life, traditional life, permissive society, all of these things were there. And I really didn't know where to go. And my father and we had a very good relationship in which we would discuss things. So I was lucky. Not all children are able to have open discussions with their parents, but I was. And he suggested, maybe you find out what your roots are before you make any further decisions. And I thought it was a good way to spend time in India, which I did. And somehow the atmosphere of that country opened up something within me. And I decided I would find out about spirituality. My mother had been following Rajayoga for a long time, but you don't always listen to spiritual matters when music and fashion are more interesting. And so India and the atmosphere there, and I thought, okay, let me find out what these people are actually saying. And it was amazing, because the one session I had with an incredibly powerful yogi who actually is now 103 years of age, I won't say old, but that's her age, physical age. Her name is Dadi Janki. She's been to Dubai several times, and who knows, maybe coming here again. Let's see. But what she said was very interesting for me. And she said, when the conscience isn't clear, then you don't know which direction to take in your life. And my question to her was, well, how do you make the conscience clear? And she said, meditate. And so my journey began. And I discovered that a mindset that had been totally related to the physical dimension, with not much space and time to think about anything beyond that, everything is here, the physical dimension, and that has everything. But no, of course it doesn't. There's a huge world that is beyond the physical, and it's waiting for me to explore. And the challenge is to shift the mindset that says, this is the most important, what I can see, what I can touch, what I can feel, what I can hear, the things that my physical senses are telling me is real, is real. But what about all the things that I can't physically touch, but I can feel deep inside? Give an example. If my mind is totally dealing with linear things and logistical things, I see a rose. What does that do to me? Am I going to think, well, how long is the stem? What is the diameter of this flower? Are those the things I'm going to think about? Or am I going to just be stunned by its beauty? Or I'm amazed by the fragrance it has? And so how do I measure fragrance? How do I measure the beauty of this rose? And it's got nothing to do with the length of its stem or the diameter of the flower. And so you begin to understand that there are things that are actually more important than the physical dimension, than the linear things. And that's just one very little example. But where the mindset is totally caught up with the physical dimension and the materialistic way of living, there's a big problem that happens. And the problem is that we lose touch with ourselves. We lose touch with the treasures that we carry within. And each and every one of us do have those treasures within. I believe that is an absolute taken. This is how it is. Every human being, in terms of the being within, in terms of the physical form, the human physiology, big differences, all sorts of features, all sorts of colors, all sorts of shapes and sizes, all of that, different. But that tells me nothing about you as the person. And yet, of course, when I'm in that materialistic mindset, I create an image that is connected with color, gender, age, clothes, all of these things. And it may represent something of who you are, but it may represent nothing of who you are. Or maybe it gives me a little indication of who you are. 5%, 10%, 20% maybe, but no more. And so when I start thinking about the being that is inside, and the being has peace and love and truth and joy and purity, these are the qualities that are nothing to do with the physical dimension of your physiology. Absolutely nothing. And so if I can connect with the being that I am inside, and my mindset switches from thinking that the external is all that matters, and I begin to think about things on a different level, then that mindset is going to help me explore a whole different world. The world up above, but also the world within. There's a world that I carry within myself that I haven't even bothered to look at because I've just been thinking about the external and reacting to the things that are external. And so the challenge is, can I make that switch from the physical dimension to the spiritual dimension? And it happens, as I say, maybe because of illness or accident, but maybe it happens because of curiosity. And certainly for me, when I began to think about choices and how to clear the conscience so that then I'm understanding choices and making, hopefully, the right choice, it was this factor, the curiosity, well, let me see what meditation can do for me. And it was lovely because I had great teachers and they were able to explain things that allowed me to go deeper inside. And within the space of about an hour, I'd had many, many questions answered and more answers than I'd even actually started to put as questions. I hadn't even learned to do that yet. But beyond that, I was able to have an experience. I was able to experience that inner being, the soul. And really, that 1 hour shaped the direction of my life that I'm moving in till today. And that was a long time ago. So I was very fortunate that my curiosity led me in the right track, and I was able to have a big shift of mindset practically instantly. Within that space of an hour, I could feel I was looking at things very differently. And then when it was time for a few minutes of silence and meditation, really, that was it. And I continued to explore the inner world. I continued to explore the dimensions beyond. And so all of that had been my journey. But the challenge, it's not easy to help anyone else make that shift. Have you tried changing mindsets for others? You haven't tried? You've tried. And has it worked? Exactly. Maybe you've never tried, but if you've ever tried to change somebody's mindset, the conclusion is, as my sister here is saying, it does not work. I can't make somebody change their mindset. That is true. You can take a horse to the water, but that's it. You can't make them drink. But even changing my own mindset is actually not so easy. That is also a challenge. And the challenge is that one moment I can be looking at things from a spiritual perspective, spiritual mindset, but it slips very quickly. And if I point here, I'm pointing to my experience of knowing that the soul is located here in the center of the forehead. And so when I look out from here, it's with a different consciousness, a different awareness, and I'm seeing you in that awareness that you are that inner being of light, that shining light that's here. And my response to you will be very different. My behavior with you will be very different. But when I shift from here back to here, just the physical dimension, then many other things get in the way. And my mindset in that physical dimension is very narrow. And I fall into the trap of being in a box very quickly. And so to keep reminding yourself to come back here to a spiritual mindset takes a little bit of attention. It's not hard work. but it takes attention. And we don't always give ourselves that time to be attentive to what's going on inside. And so, yes, I can have a shift, but even then, to maintain it is not so easy. And of course, the atmosphere in which we are living today is very much, food and fashion and external things, and these are the things that are important. There are deadlines to be met, there's a task to be done, and so there's all those pressures, and it's just constant, it's relentless. And so to, again, keep my awareness and my attention, I need to nurture this new mindset that I've learnt about until it becomes as natural as the other state used to be. But the other one was from birth, and the other one was supported by everything else. And in this case, I don't have any external supports unless I very consciously choose other people who are traveling in the same direction as me. And yes, that's also a possibility, but you can't always do that. But yes, maybe what I can do is to allocate a certain period of my day so that I'm giving time to myself specifically for this. And of course, the best is first thing in the morning. Then if I can get my compass straight, then I can maybe remind myself through the day about this and keep coming back to that consciousness again and again. So the challenge of changing my mindset, never mind anybody else's mindset, but even then, you've made that shift from the physical dimension to the awareness of that which is really important, even though it's not visible. Why I say it's really important is because it's actually nothing in my physiology that is determining anything that I do. Yes, there's an amazing autonomous system that's functioning without me having to think about what's going on in here, so we've been blessed in a very specific way. But when I'm thinking, when I'm feeling, when memories come, when I'm experiencing, where is all that happening? And that's not just in the brain. It's actually this living energy that I am, this invisible being, the soul. And so coming to the awareness of the soul takes a little bit of attention and some information. But even on that spiritual journey, you keep coming across different aspects that you've been holding on to for your life up until now, and you thought that this was the truth. And now you're questioning. And it's important to question. Otherwise, mindsets get stuck in different things. So maybe I believed in God. Maybe I believed in a specific God. And now I'm asking myself the question, well, who is this being? And what are my ideas? Am I ready to shift my ideas about this being? And so, first challenge was getting to know myself. The next one was getting to know the divine. And maybe even where I'd set aside the whole concept of the divine, because there's so much misinformation that we're exposed to nowadays. And so you feel, well, I'm not sure what is true. Maybe it's not true. Better I don't go down that area at all. So maybe I'd even set aside the whole subject of the divine, and I wasn't going to look at it anymore, which is what I did age 14, going to convent schools until 11, and then Anglican school, and exposed to Hinduism and having lots of questions and not finding answers. So, age 14, I thought, I think the best way to move forward is science. At least science is giving me answers to some of my questions. And I don't need to think about God until I'm maybe 60 years old. And so I very consciously set it aside. But when I had my experience of the soul, and it was very powerful, just feeling this inner being and knowing that it's this being that is making everything else function. That amazing sense of being in charge of this whole physical chariot and deciding how to be able to manage this. So the experience of this detachment of who I am from the physical form and beginning to explore this identity of the inner being was an amazing experience that opened up many doors. And so the next day when I was hearing about the divine and experiencing, not just hearing about it, but experiencing that awareness of the presence of the divine, that was another big shift of mindset for me. And it's usually true that where you've held on to a belief, just listening to something is unlikely to shift that. But if there's an experience that you have which is different to the mindset that you had before, that experience is able to help you make the shift. And so the challenge is here, knowing that maybe there is, maybe there isn't a source that I can connect with. But how do I connect? Meditation gives us a formula, very simple, step by step. First step, second step, third step, follow the formula and experiment with it and see what happens. And that, again, that first experience being so powerful was really, again, the second foundation block for my spiritual journey. Knowing myself to a certain extent, and today I would say what I knew of myself at that point was minuscule. It was maybe 1%. Yes, I knew I was a spiritual being, which was a fantastic shift. But knowing who I am, it's only been through the journey of many years that I've been able to understand more and more. And some of you might think, well, I want to know now. I don't want to wait many years, which is good. It's good to have that enthusiasm. And yes, definitely, you can move at whatever speed you choose. Nobody else dictates the speed of your learning or the speed of your discovery. You dictate the direction you want to go in, and also you decide how quickly you're able to understand more and more and discover more and more. Just depends on each one. But I'm thinking about how if I want to shift my mindset from a situation in which, say, maybe climate change, let's take that up since it's an issue that's very current. I came a couple of days ago from India, and I'd been in Delhi and then in Mount Abu. And if your mindset tells you that, well, all this is fake news, as some powerful leaders are saying, maybe just see what's going on. Delhi, and it was March, and it was supposed to be spring. And there was no sign of spring. It was very definitely winter. It was very cold. Some nights it was freezing. Mount Abu, again, March, and the weather should have changed. but it hadn't changed. And so certainly all over North India, it was really extremely cold. I come here and the flight is 2 hours delayed because of fog. And I've been coming to the UAE for decades now, and it was the first time I'd ever heard about fog in Dubai. And so where's my mindset? Am I going to hear a powerful leader who's saying, oh, this is fake, an imagination? Or am I going to see that, well, things are not happening in a seasonal way as one would expect? Things are happening very differently. Am I ready to listen to the science behind climate change and try and understand what's going on and make my mind up for myself? So knowledge, information, and then my own experience. And I put those things together and I say, I think there's something here. And then I ask myself another question. Well, if climate change is a reality, is there anything we can do about it? And there are some crazy things that I hear about from scientists who say that, well, we can have things up in the atmosphere, we can have climate engineering, and we can shift climates and many things, but it's ideas. Nothing has actually been proved that can shift those things on that level. But yes, all of us together collectively, we can do something. And collective doesn't change just like that, but it starts with individuals. And yes, there are things that I can do today, here and now, that can make a difference. And so it's up to me. Now, if my mind has shifted and now it's in a different pattern, now I can start looking at things from a practical perspective and say, okay, what does my diet have to do with this? Let me get the information. Is there a diet that's going to be more sustainable? And yes, definitely there is. Is there transportation that can be more sustainable? The Brahma Kumaris as a community in India, I think we're the single largest users of renewable energies on an organizational level. And so we have our own solar plant power station that's able to provide electricity for a township of 35,000 people. And I won't go into the details, but yes, 20 years ago, and it wasn't a new fashionable thing, but 20 years ago, we started working with renewable energies, and it continues, of course. So one individual says, yes, I think it's possible to change things. And many others begin to think in the same way, and things begin to shift within our world, not just within a community, but within the world. We have many organizations come to us to learn about our methodology and the things that we have done the research for, and we're happy to share that. So my point is that today, the way that our minds have been working in terms of just the physical dimension of the world, we've created a little bit of a sad story, a state of chaos actually. And it's very important to make that shift to a different mindset. And I don't know what the trigger for you would be, but maybe curiosity has brought you here today, and I hope that you're going to explore things further. I want to look at mindset from another perspective. We were looking at it in terms of the external influences that we are exposed to. But there's something internal also that creates certain mindsets. And I'm thinking about habits. I create a particular habit, and the habit becomes so strong that that habit creates a mindset. And then whether the habit is a positive one or one that's not so conducive to physical health and well-being, but I try to justify it. Give you a simple example. I come home from work and I'm tired, and the way that I feel the pressures going away is just to put on the television. And I sit in front of the television and I think I'm relaxing, right? My mindset is, okay, I need an hour just to unwind, and whatever is on the box doesn't matter. I don't make a conscious decision about what I'm seeing. I just switch on, and I forget I have the choice that I can press a button and switch off. And so the television set gets on, and I'm watching and I'm watching. And at some point of time, a few years down the line, it's become a habit that I feel totally comfortable with. I'm in that mindset in which I'm still thinking that this is the way to relax. And then I do a little bit more reading, and I discover that, in fact, it's not very relaxing. I'm being bombarded with all sorts of information that I have no control over. I've forgotten to switch off. I think I just need to switch it on and leave it on until whenever. And so the things that are coming to me, are they positive? Are they uplifting? Are they enlightening? Maybe. But maybe not. And most times it's not just neutral things that are coming at me, it's negative things that are coming at me. And I don't realize that all the stuff that I'm being bombarded with is actually not very relaxing for my mind at all. Which is why when I try and go to sleep at night, the images that have been imposed onto my awareness are the images that are causing me a disturbance. Now, it's a habit, and I'm reading something that's giving me information that's very valuable, very interesting, but am I ready to change? It's a challenge. I'm also reading that I need to exercise more. I need to at least go for some walking. But am I ready to face the challenge and switch, and instead of just sitting as a couch potato, am I ready to shift? So I'm seeing that habits that we formed create a certain mindset, and it's extremely challenging to switch that around, unless I begin to meditate. What's happening in the process of, and I mentioned television as being something that we're all exposed to, and then we can make a conscious choice about it. But yes, there is something I can do about it. What happens is that if I decide to learn to meditate, I'm learning to focus my mind in a very specific way. I'm not telling my mind, be quiet, be silent, because that's next to impossible. But what I'm telling my mind is, you don't have to go round and around in this direction. You can start moving in a different direction. You can start having thoughts that are elevated, thoughts that are noble. And even if it's for 5 minutes, is it possible for me to have noble thoughts, elevated thoughts, pure thoughts? Why not? Let me try it and see. Let me see if I can connect with the being that I truly am and connect with the treasures that I carry within myself. And for those few moments, minutes, experience the peace, the truth, the love that I carry within my own inner being. And if I can do that for a few minutes, it definitely impacts the rest of the next hour, or maybe even several hours. You know, it's like when you have anger. 1 minute of anger has an impact of total upheaval in your whole physical system for 5 minutes. You have anger for 2 minutes, and then it's not just for 10 minutes, but it moves exponentially. You have anger for 5 minutes, and it takes at least an hour for the body to come back to its normal state in blood pressure and adrenaline and so on and so on and so on. The opposite is also true. If I can let my mind experience peace for a minute, the impact of that on my physiology, but also on my inner state of being, is something that lasts for maybe 30 minutes. And if I increase it to 2 minutes, 5 minutes, again, the impact of that lasts longer and longer and longer. When they do studies on positive psychology, and of course they see all the benefits that come from from a positive state of mind, when you're moving in the right direction with your thoughts, what they find is that there's only one technique that's able to help people have a continuous state of benefit. Again, example, if I eat chocolate, it makes me feel good. And there's a chemical within cocoa that does that, so it's not just my imagination, it's true. But if I keep eating chocolate, I think, well, I've had 1 bar and I feel so good. If I have a second bar, I'll feel even better. True? Not true. Definitely not true. Probably after the second bar, I'll feel so sick and it'll have cured me of eating chocolate forever. But maybe I'll forget and next week I'll again do the same thing. But no, definitely, second bar of chocolate and it'll make you really feel a little bit sick. So continue to do what was helping you feel good and creating a positive feeling. And there's a critical point at which it reverses. Then it's no more a good feeling. But meditation, the only technique that they've been able to discover that continues to help you feel good. Not just 5 minutes meditation, an hour of meditation, and you feel empowered, you feel strengthened, you feel all the benefits of love and peace and joy and everything else that's on the positive screen. And so, if I can do that, then the experience of being able to change my mindset, and therefore even the power to be able to change my habits, comes very naturally, automatically. And so a simple introduction to possible change of mindset. One other thing that I haven't mentioned so far, and then I want to open up for questions and comments, and then some time for practical meditation also. But I'm thinking about the role of conscience. And so far, haven't mentioned it. Between my thinking in a specific way and the habits that I have and new information that I'm being exposed to, what role does the conscience play within all of this? Habits, yes, if my conscience really begins to scream at me, if it's speaking softly, I ignore it. But sometimes there comes a moment when the conscience actually screams and stops you in your tracks, and you say, I have to do something about this. I can't let this habit take hold of me and carry on in the same way. So the conscience can come alive and become very powerful. And meditation actually awakens the conscience, because the influences we've been exposed to have paralyzed the conscience almost. So the conscience has stopped speaking to us. We get exposed to so much stuff that to know what is right, what is wrong, we forget about that. We don't know anymore. Everything seems to be grey rather than black and white. But in fact, there is right, there is wrong, and I need to be able to have a conscience that's very clean, to be able to understand and differentiate. Today, post-truth era and all the things that are going on, very difficult. But when I go up above the things happening here onto another level, onto another plane, then in that plane, in the plane of spirituality and meditation, the conscience comes alive. And then it's not screaming at me, but it's powerful, and it's able to make its influence felt. And so my mind is still going along the same track as before, but there's a filter, which was supposed to be there all the time anyway, but it sort of became dysfunctional. But now it comes into play again. And so the filter becomes strong. The filter begins to do its work. And so my mind is going along in one track, but the filter stops it, and I have to rethink. And I have to reorganize what's going on in here. And my mindset begins to shift in a positive direction. So understanding myself and understanding what's going on deeply within is something that we're able to do. It's available for all of us, and if I'm interested, then I begin to go into it deeper and deeper and discover more and more treasures. And those treasures are there within each and every one of us to discover and use in our lives. So thank you for your attention. And if there are questions, comments, we can have those for the next few minutes.
Thank you so much for this wonderful talk. Sister, I wanted to know about, you said the filter of the mind. Could you elaborate a little more? How do we keep cleaning that filter like we do for our ACs? We never clean the filter of our minds, and it gets cluttered and cluttered and cluttered so much that no matter how much we clean, it's not cleaning. Can you help?
Mhm.
Thank you.
I was talking more about the filters being the conscience, and that is then, in a sense, the filter for the mind. So the mind is coming with all sorts of thoughts, neutral, negative, positive, waste, all sorts of things. And normally, because the conscience has become dysfunctional, we allow everything to come through. The filter isn't able to function and stop waste thoughts or negative thoughts, so they come through, and you find yourself doing actions that later on you say, why did I say this, why did I do this, and there's regret. And so making the conscience powerful and making the conscience clean and above the influence of media, society, and habit and friends and all of those things is the whole journey of spirituality and meditation. So when I meditate, if I use another word for conscience, buddhi. The buddhi, and again the word intellect doesn't fully convey this, but it's the closest that we can see. When the buddhi is given nourishment, when I'm given spiritual understanding and the understanding of values and how it's possible again to connect with the values within, and maybe it's by reading something spiritual every day, reading something inspiring every day, and so the intellect gets nourished by all of this, and so the conscience becomes stronger, and in that connection of my thoughts and my awareness with the divine, I'm able to draw that power of purity, and so we're cleaning out the conscience. And because the conscience is strong, then the negative thoughts and the unclean thoughts don't come through, and I'm able to start shifting that energy also.
Thank you.
It's other people at the back who need to hear you too.
In decision making, normally emotions and logic play a part. How does conscience figure or play a role with emotions and logic?
You know, we think that we're thinking creatures, but most times it's been found that our decisions are not based on logic. It's more often emotion that drives us, and we don't even realize this, and we still say that we are thinking creatures. But spirituality awakens that aspect of being able to think rather than be driven by emotions and feelings. And so conscience is part of that capacity that I have that takes in information and uses that knowledge, discards what's not useful. So the knowledge that I have and the conscience, they're part of the same aspect of the inner being, the soul. Let me use the Hindi word, buddhi. The buddhi is the container that does two things. This container takes in information but retains what is useful, and it becomes knowledge for me. But also, buddhi is that factor that's telling me right and wrong. And so the more I connect my buddhi in meditation with the divine, the cleaner it becomes, the more powerful it becomes, and what my understanding is then telling me what to do and what not to do. And so what we're doing is rising above the state of just instinct and emotion, and beginning to use the buddhi and the conscience in a very powerful way. And the buddhi isn't just the thinking process on the linear scale, but it's the process of thinking and understanding on a spiritual level. Make sense? Invitation to come and understand more about these terms, because we're using these terms and maybe we have different definitions. Okay, the intellect. So Rajayoga is described as buddhi yoga. It's described as the king of yogas because it takes in the bhakti, the love, the devotion, the hatha, the discipline, the gyan, the knowledge, the buddhi, the karma. You can have this connection even as you're in action, in motion. So it comprises of all of these things.
Can you give us some practical in this modern world we are in, we're always having our business or our work atmosphere to think about when you get up in the morning. Okay, I understand that you say start with some spirituality, or what we do is normally read the newspaper in the morning, and then all the messages come across. So you're confused now. Tell us something what we should do in life. That means in our busy, of course, we have to concentrate on our business or office or whatever. So how do we, how it's practical to suddenly, not suddenly. I know you say come from Rajayoga and meditation, but tell us something in the morning. You get up, you go for a walk or whatever. So you have your time, but you have got just 1 or 2 hours in the morning, and then you go to your work, and then you're so busy in the day, and then you come back home and again.
I think every one of you has in your pocket or in your handbag a little gadget, a mobile. And so what happens is you use it and it does amazing things for you that 20 years ago we couldn't have imagined. But what you need to do is to recharge it. And if you recharge it at night, then it's useful for you the whole of the next day. And meditation is a recharging of the inner battery, except that the best time to do the recharging is early morning. So the suggestion is you decide how much time you want to give for recharging your own inner battery. Is it going to be 10 minutes? Is it going to be half an hour? Whatever. And that time is the time that actually prepares you to manage life in a busy schedule through the day. And if you don't give yourself that time and space for recharging, then through the day you get stressed, you get pressured, and your blood pressure goes racing high. You're a candidate for a heart attack. All sorts of wrong things begin to happen with our mind and our body. And that's the state of the world today. And the very simple remedy to a lot of ailments is remove the stress. You can't remove the situations that you're in, so the stresses are going to remain the same, but my response can be different. I can increase my own inner capacity so that I don't get stressed by all of these things. And if I've meditated in the morning, I'm much more efficient as a human being through the rest of the day. And not just the rest of the day, but I come home at night and I'm still able to enjoy my time with my family instead of coming and becoming a couch potato like I described earlier. But if I don't recharge, then I'm not fulfilling my responsibility to myself or my family, and I'm not functioning at highest efficiency in my work. And so things are going astray. So we use this term busy, and we're all busy, but in fact we don't need to be so busy. We can actually be less stressed, more calm, and enjoy life a lot more. I know there was somebody right at the back who asked, but yes, sure, you go ahead, and then the person right at the back.
Good evening, sister. Thank you so much for a beautiful talk this evening. I would like to know if this topic can also include changing a belief system. So, as an example, let's say that the happiness of my life depends on achieving X. And years of trying has only been failure at achieving X. So clearly my belief system is like, okay, this ain't happening. No matter what I do, it's not working. And now I'm a mess because without X, I'm super unhappy. So I don't know how to either stop wanting X or changing my belief that I can believe I can have X.
Here's another scenario to add to the one you've described. you achieve X and you're still not happy. No, but that's also something that I've seen very often, that I have a belief that if I get this, that's going to be perfect. Everything's going to be fine, roses all the way. And
Yes.
I get there and it doesn't work out like that. So there's always that distinct possibility that that may also happen.
We live with the possibility that X will work.
But okay, let's take your scenario. If happiness is a goal that I'm targeting in the future, how long is it going to take me to get there? And does it mean that until I get there, I'm not going to be happy? Well, that's a huge waste of many precious days of my life. Never mind weeks or months, but even days of my life. Yes, you can definitely change your belief and your mindset and begin to think happiness is not a destination. Happiness is the path that I follow. It's like when people used to say to me, peace activists, they used to say, we have to fight for peace. I say, and it was a slogan they were using, really. We have to fight for peace. And I used to think, well, if I'm fighting, how am I ever going to get to be peaceful? But if I follow the path of peace today, then we're going to get to the destination of peace. And so today, if I make a conscious choice to be happy now, then I'll get to the destination of happiness. And so yes, and the other thing to know is that happiness is a choice, but also happiness is something inside. It's not something outside. It doesn't depend on possessions, it doesn't depend on people, it doesn't depend on circumstance. It's a conscious choice I can make for myself.
Thank you. But in the process, how do you give up wanting X?
Okay. Don't give up wanting it, but see if you can be happy today, and maybe being happy today is going to get you X. Okay, the person at the back.
Om Shanti. I want to know whether it is possible practically to be a master in spirituality along with the worldly things, or we have to slowly detach ourselves from the worldly things and slowly move towards the spirituality. As I have seen so many saints, ultimately they have to give up all their things and slowly they move towards the spirituality. So that is the reality. That's what I want to know.
The Raj Yoga that we are practicing is also Karma Yoga. And if I give you statistics, maybe there's 1 million people following the path of Raj Yoga in the way that I've been talking about. Raj Yoga in a way is being used by many, many people for the specific path that I'm following. So there's about 1 million people who are following the path of Raj Yoga. And only about, I think, less than 10% would be people who are actually living at the centers, less than 10%, living at the centers and keeping the centers functioning and manned, staffed and so on. But everybody else is living at home with their family, following their career, their profession. I met a young man who's now 25, I think, and he became the youngest Indian inland taxation officer. There's a specific term for it, revenue officer or something, IRA, they were calling it. he's, as I say, just 25, and at age 23 he became this Inland Revenue Officer. And he's been meditating since he was little because his parents came to Rajayoga. And the sister asked him, how many medals have you won in sports? And at age 25, he's got about 40 medals for sports, different sports activities. So this is a young man I met just about a week ago in Delhi. So that's just one example. There's another man who lives in Kenya. Again, I'm quoting you a few examples here and there, and not everybody achieves 40 medals and everything, but definitely meditation helps you be at peace with yourself and do the things that you're doing in life in a better way. For this person in Kenya, he's the chairman of, I think, about 50 plus companies, and he started a process that he called Blue Companies scheme. And he said that he wanted to start first in Kenya and then extend it out to Africa and then wherever else people wanted. But in this, the policy is that no corruption, zero corruption. And so whether it's people who supply, people who purchase, all along the line, the whole thing is zero corruption, zero corruption. And he has hundreds of companies in Kenya who've now signed up for this. And the scheme is growing. And he says, if I can make it happen in Africa, I can take it out to other continents too. So, and both these people I've talked about are Raj Yogis. And so definitely we say, stay right where you are, but do things differently, with a different consciousness, with the motive of spiritual development for yourself and an instrument to help support positive transformation for others too. We don't believe that isolation can have an impact on the world, but if you're in the world, engaged in the world, then there can be a positive impact on everyone around you. And in fact, if I can take the liberty of asking our sponsor, who is actually here, to share his thoughts on that question, because I know that you yourself practice meditation and are very much involved in the world. So perhaps you could give the microphone to Mr. Murad.
Good evening. I'm the same person you saw on the slide, slightly different. But this is probably something that has come from what Sister Jayanti had been talking about, where positions, the way you look, the things that you have don't make any difference anymore. It's the mindset, and this is probably something that has come to me when I was working in the police. And titles didn't matter anymore. And you had the confidence of being able to do whatever you put your mind to. That is a very powerful aspect of being able to change your mind, being able to meditate and reflect on what's possible for you. So that has changed a lot of things in me. And I echo what Sister Jayanti said. It's possible for anyone to do that. As long as you have the mindset to do it, you will be able to do it.
Thank you.
Sorry? No. No, I wasn't following Rajayoga. I wasn't introduced to it, but I was meditating in other aspects. So it's not necessary that it's Rajayoga, although it's a very effective one, I found out later. But if you put your mindset, and it's not only meditation, it's probably one part of it. It's the changing of the mindset at the beginning that will introduce you to different things. at a later stage that you could actually enhance your self-confidence, your ability to shut down on certain things. And let me tell you, I had a very busy life, and I had a very aggressive life. I was working in the criminal investigation department, so it wasn't easy. Then I was actually managing the ambulance department in the city of Dubai. So it was about saving lives, about hurrying up, being able to attend to people, feeling responsible for it, and so on. It makes a difference for you to stop, reflect, and then act accordingly. Yeah.
Thank you for that practical experience. In fact, yes, I see that our MC is here, so maybe time to close the questions. One second.
If somebody has hurt you, what should your mindset be? Because obviously you will be angry, and you'll be, and within yourself you can say many things, but how would you then stop that from taking over yourself and your consciousness? Because that feeling of regret and anger will be there. Even if you're not, you're trying your best to be this goody-goody or whatever it is. I'm just making it as basic as possible.
Okay. Here's one way to look at it. Do I want to stay in bondage to that individual who has hurt me? Or do I want my freedom? And if I want my freedom, which means I don't have to be thinking about that individual, I don't have to be blaming them, I don't have to have anything to do with them, I need to be able to let go and forgive. And that's the way I can find freedom for myself. So forgiveness is freedom. No, it's not. If I'm expecting them to respond in some other way, then I'm still in bondage to how they think and feel and when they're ready and whatever. But I decide enough is enough. I want to be free.
Thank you. Thank you all. It was a very, very interesting Q&A session, and believe me, it is not easy. Challenges in changing mindset, as Mr. Mohammed Murad and Sister Jayanti rightfully mentioned, that we're all caught up in external identity, like an identity crisis, that it's all about going inside and identifying the internal identity of mine. Because I myself have personally experienced the challenges of changing mindset, because in the last 11 months, I've relocated 4 times across political borders, not within the country. And it was, believe me, it was very challenging. And Rajayoga meditation and being associated with the Brahma Kumaris since childhood, it has helped me immensely develop that strength and ability to face that challenge. And it is, and I also come from a country, which is Sri Lanka. It's heavily affected by civil war. So again, relocating at a young age, it has been very challenging. So as our speakers today and our chief guest said, that it's all about identifying the inner self and consistently experimenting meditation. That kind of gave me the experience. The moment I got the taste of that experience, just you will not want to leave that. It can be any form of meditation, but at the end, it's all about identifying the inner self. Because today we live in an information age. The information is overloaded. And sometimes we reach a point that we cannot convince people just with information, but that moment of pause has to come. So, in the interest of time, I would like to conclude the session. But before that, Sister Jayanti, in appreciation for all of you all being here on behalf of Rajayoga Center, will share with you all a lovely little virtue box inside which there's sweet. And this box has different values written on it, which you could possibly keep it at your office desk or at home and practice something per se. And our dear, loving Sister Jyoti will also share with you blessing cards, which you can keep it as a bookmark or practice for the day. So please do come and take the benefit from both of them. And with that, yes.
May I request that we have just a couple of minutes of meditation?
Yes, we'll start with meditation. Yes, please.
Just sit comfortably, and I'll speak out my own thoughts in meditation, and try experimenting with keeping your eyes open and focusing on this point of light. We see the self as a being of light. We see the divine as a being of light. Sitting comfortably, I reflect on the things I've been hearing about. And I go on an inner journey. And I come to a space inside where only I can enter. And going deeper and deeper within, I connect with myself, a being of light, a being of peace. And in this awareness, peace opens another door, and I come to the awareness of the love that I carry within myself. And another door opens, and I realize I carry truth within myself. And in this awareness of the being of light that I am, I feel the presence of the divine, the supreme, the one with all attributes, the one with compassion that is unlimited. And in this presence, I feel the love, the truth, the power, and the compassion. And all of this begins to transform me. I can feel old habits beginning to melt away. Old beliefs beginning to fade. And the soul being transformed. and love radiate out into the world, touching souls, transforming them. And the light enters the world, and we move towards a better world, a world filled with light. The darkness ends and the day begins. I hold this awareness of who I am and stay connected with the divine. And keep in my awareness this experience as I move back into the physical dimension. Here and now, and all the things I need to do. But I keep this awareness with me. Om Shanti.